Hi, Ashley. It's really exciting because you and I don't know each other, but I feel like we know each other just from that TikTok relationship. So I appreciate you doing this with me. Just want to let people know a little bit about you. You live in South Carolina. You have over 12 years experience. Director of nursing, program administrator, did nurse education. You have an expertise in staff leadership and program creation. I was following you at the time that you made this big leap. You retired from those prestigious positions and you've started focusing on leadership training and mentorship. So tell me a little bit about that. What inspired you to make that jump?
So I recently had my fourth child, which is just a total curveball having four. And in anything in healthcare, especially the hospital, you are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I really thought long and hard about it. And I had to just shift my focus a little bit and make my family more a priority. But I didn't want to leave that leadership aspect behind because I know that's what I'm called to do. And I know there's a way to do both. Want to reach and help develop leaders on a bigger audience.
So good. You're brave to make a jump. That's a secure job. It's a secure
Yes.
paycheck. It's a big deal to follow a passion that way. When you first decided to go into nursing, what made you excited about that?
My main passion was, and this has always been what I live by, is just to be that positive influence and help people.
It's just so fascinating to me. I didn't plan on asking you that question, but I had a feeling that was going to be your answer because I think when we're called to leadership, and I loved that you used that word, it's always been
Right.
that calling is there and it shows up in different ways. And we use
Yes.
our leadership skills different in how we're helping people, but we're always helping people.
I completely agree with that. I played sports all my life and I always was a leader on a team in some way. And from, my high school days, I just loved being that encourager and that motivator. As I found it in nursing and in life, it's just been great.
And I'm sure you apply all of those same things as a mom. So it's amazing how those skills are just part of who you are.
Correct.
For you to transition, like just from the nursing aspect more into the leadership, that probably felt natural for you.
Yes. When I was in a role outside of the hospital, there was an opportunity, just a short moment for me to be in a manager role, which I embraced. And then I moved back into the hospital setting. And I've had the same boss in my leadership career, and she was just so supportive. So as she moved up, she was taking me under her wing and
Oh,
saying, come on, we can do this together. We can do this. So after I had my second baby, when I came back from maternity leave, I became a middle manager and I just fell in love with it. And I just loved just learning people and they were my peers. So I worked alongside them and then I had that switch and I became their leader. But it wasn't a bad transition. They were just so supportive every single day.
I think your experience is how it should go. And unfortunately, I don't think it always goes like that. It doesn't go
Right.
like that often.
I agree. I think a lot of people become in that role either because they have the most experience or
Mhm.
they've been there the longest or they're successful at their job, which is great. But that whole leadership and people skills aspect just isn't there. And a lot of people, I think, give it a try because
Mhm.
they want to see how it goes and it just doesn't work out.
You
Mm-mm.
said the perfect thing. And I understand why people promote somebody who's had a lot of experience and they're really good at their job.
Right.
I get that, but they are not looking at the people element. If they don't have the people skills, it does not matter how good they are at their job. It doesn't matter how many years they've had in that position, how successful they were. Their role as a leader will not succeed. Have to have people skills. It's different than doing the job. It's managing other people doing the job and empowering them to do the job. That is very, very different. Sounds like you did have very supportive
Good.
boss and then your team was supportive of you. That's the ideal situation. I know it was full of challenges too. I'm not saying it was easy every day. That's the ideal situation. And I
Yes.
just don't see that a lot. So
Right.
helping people with these people skills makes all the difference. There's a common thought out there that people believe you either have people skills or you don't. What are your thoughts on that?
I think if you have the true passion to have that positive influence, you can learn those people skills. You have to really want to make a difference. You just have to have that in your core. And I truly feel you can learn how to deal with people, but dealing with people is hard. There's so
Yes.
many personalities, there's so many situations,
Yeah.
and it takes a lot of practice and just experience to feel
Mhm.
somewhat comfortable. I mean,
Yeah.
even after 10 years, some of the conversations I had, are still not 100% comfortable. But I think if you just have that passion, you can learn those type of skills.
I agree with you. And I think people don't often agree with us on that. Yes, I think that natural pull to it and that
Right.
natural wanting to help, that could be in our DNA and that's part of us. If we say, you know what, I want to be the best manager or leader I can be, then we can choose to explore what that means.
Mhm.
It's a choice and it's a decision. And I don't think enough managers and leaders make that decision. I think they're often thrown into those positions for the reasons we talked about, and then they're
Mhm.
just running from day one and they're never taking that time to really reflect and
Yes.
explore the changes that they need to make. So that's where people like you and I come in, and it's exciting helping people develop those skills. If you had to just off the top of your head name some qualities that you believe are like essential for a good leader or manager, what comes to mind for you?
My main thing is being trusting. That trust, I talk about it all the time, but it is so important. But there's so many things that go into
Yeah.
either trusting your leader or your leader trusting their team. I think that is so big. And they
Mhm.
have to be compassionate. Of course, they have to
Yeah.
have that compassionate. And now, more and more this day and age, they have to be flexible,
Oh, yeah,
have to
yeah.
be flexible. They have to understand that we're all human beings and we have life happens, and you
Mhm.
can't be so rigid and have those expectations because it doesn't work out.
Yeah, very, very good. The trust for me, it's a number one piece that has to be built. If we build trust with our people, then when we ask them to do something or we're suggesting that they try something new, there isn't instant resistance. There might be some fear or some
Right.
doubt, but there isn't resistance or pushback because they trust you.
Correct.
They trust that you're
Absolutely.
not leading them to fail.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they know that you're going to support them, and they
Yeah.
know that you're going to be with them by their side. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of leaders don't understand that trust takes time. It's
Oh,
not overnight. I remember it took me almost 1 year when I became that middle manager for me to really feel that my team was on board and that they and I were on the same page trying to accomplish the same things. And it was hard
yeah.
work. And
Yeah.
they weren't like, it was a great transition, but it still took some time. And it was me being out there with them and showing that, yes, I feel you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you get the work done and support you. That's how that trust, evolves over time. But
Wow.
but it's so big and it's so important.
So
And
big.
yeah,
And what I found just interesting about what you just said is that it was a good transition and it still took a year.
yes,
So
yes,
imagine a manager being thrown into an environment or work culture that is hostile or lots
right,
of conflict. How do you build that trust? Like that's
right.
frightening. It's really difficult.
It takes a lot of patience,
Mhm.
and just consistency.
Yeah.
And you have to have a plan, whether it's hostile or not. You have to have a really good plan on what type of leader you want to be. What is your current environment and atmosphere,
Yeah.
and what are the first couple steps you're going to do to try and change that and make that for the better. And
Mhm.
and I know you will get that resistance even more so every single day, but you just have to understand that you're doing this for the better and just keep pushing through. And
Mhm.
eventually you will break through. But it's also, too, just learning your people. And if those are truly resistant and then they just can't get past it, that's a different avenue than those who truly want to be there and want
Yeah.
to do the right thing. They just need some coaching to get there.
Mhm. And often the people who want to do better, to
Right.
grow, to get along with everybody, they get lost in that conflict.
Yes.
So we have to stay consistent as leaders and we need to be the ones saying this is okay and this is not okay
Correct.
and put those standards into place and those values in place and have
Yes.
everybody working towards that because then the people who have the right motive and the people who want to do better, they're going to start to rise up
Yes.
because they'll feel like, okay, I can now use my voice. I
Right.
can try something and I'm not going to get harassed, bullied at work.
Yes.
It's scary and it goes both ways. When you have a manager being bullied by staff, that's still a management ownership issue.
Right.
And I get a lot of pushback when I say that. But somehow we are allowing this
Correct.
as the owners, as the
Yep.
administrators, as the management team. So if a manager is being bullied and that is continuing, then that manager is not being supported by whoever's above them.
I agree.
That's just how it is. So it's an
Yes,
organizational
it
issue.
is. It is.
It's
And there's no true focus on that, or,
no,
the processes or policies in place to squash that as soon as it happens.
exactly.
Yes.
And that's why when you become a manager in that kind of environment, you have to be that person with so much passion
Yes.
for
Yes.
change
Yes.
and the ability to do the right thing when it's hard.
And from my experience, a lot of managers fear, if they have those hard conversations or really address that conflict, that their employees are just going to leave. And they might, but you don't want those negative
No,
people who bring down your team. And
that's
I see that all the time. That fear is there. Well, I'd rather have someone who's maybe not on board than no one at all. But
yeah.
they hear it, but I don't think they fully understand that one person can bring it down, and they
Yes,
have to address that quickly because it's just a spiral. It just continues to happen.
does. And they don't understand. Like out of school, you don't need 15 bullies. One bully can make
Yes.
school terrible for everybody. One
Yes.
person can do that.
Yep.
So, yes, I agree with you. And I think today, because we have so much turnover out
Hmm.
there is so much fear. People are keeping employees that are not
Right.
working at those values, are not working with the right intentions and motives because these companies are so desperate for employees that I do think if you have one person who is a real power person and bullying or negative, if you do have that person removed because they are just not going to go along with the values and standards, it is amazing the performance that will come out of the team after those behaviors have been removed.
Getting the manager that confidence and
Yeah.
to address it and just move on from that. Also see a lot of time managers spend a lot of time on those low performers or those that aren't coming
Mhm.
along with those values, and what happens is those that are really on board aren't, they're not in the shuffle, they don't have
No.
the focus of the manager, and then they stop working or maybe less motivated to do the job. It's
Yeah.
just, everything has an effect on one another. But yes.
Ooh, that's a good point. Because I'm all for spending the time training. If low performers want to learn and they're just lacking some skills or
Yes,
experience, give them the training, send them
absolutely.
to
Yep.
extra training. Like, I'm all for it. I don't want to give up on people. They're putting in effort and trying, but you cannot do that at the expense of the other ones.
Correct.
And that's why management is tough because you are dividing yourself into how many pieces?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes, really high performers or skilled people don't need the micromanaging. They don't need you checking on all their tasks, but they still want your attention. Do you ever go to any of the higher performing, more experienced, skilled people and have them mentor some of the ones that were having a harder time? Was that
Yes,
something?
we did that. We do that all the time in nursing, which is great. We have charge nurses, we have leads, and then we have preceptors.
Okay, good.
So it's finding those people who have the right focus and, the right patience and passion and all that kind of stuff. But I
Yeah,
would go to them and lead on them. I had a couple meetings with our charge nurses just to empower them, to tell them that you make a difference. You are there every shift working with your team members. You can support them and you can have that difficult conversation if they're not doing or performing the way they should, just empowering them. But yes, finding those right people, so it's not on the manager to have every single conversation
exactly.
every single time, because you can't keep up with that. And then what happens? No conversations are
Yeah,
taking place.
exactly.
So you really have to find those key performers or those who are passionate and really develop and empower them to help you, because it is
Mhm.
a team. You have to have that team approach.
And how did they receive that from you? Because that's not technically their job. They're getting paid the same as they would whether they do that or not.
Right. So I've always been very upfront and honest. And when I was in the director role, it was a little different than when I was the middle manager.
Mhm.
But before anybody got that role or title, we laid out the expectations. And my expectation in that role was you were the leader for the shift. So you were in charge of the operations and the people at the same time. Yes, I was right there supporting them, but I wanted them to feel that empowerment that they can have those conversations and build those relationships because honestly, the employees looked up to them more than they did myself
Wow.
because they were there every single minute of the day working with them. But it was just laying out that expectation.
Did they believe that if they did that role and they did that well, showing that those leadership qualities and skills, could that be opening the doors for them for some other position down the road?
Yes. And I think a lot of people think that there's not a lot of people that want to be that motivator or that person who inspires or empowers, but there are. You just
Uh-huh.
have to find them and you have to have those conversations. Early on, when I hired them, I had that conversation with them because I wanted to know those who wanted that development and I could keep pushing to be what they
Mhm.
wanted to be. And I relied on them and we met frequently. We had frequent conversations about that. But I remember that one meeting I had with the charge nurses, you could tell in the room. You could tell the ones, and I was a director at this time, so I was not their direct manager, but I could feel our culture shifting because a lot of our charge nurses were just saying, oh, the manager's going to handle that. And my managers were drowning. They could not keep up with all of that. But I could see the room and I could tell the ones who were truly invested in it. And then I could tell the ones who were like, oh no, this is just not for me anymore. But it
Mhm.
was just having a frank conversation with them. And I did some coaching and development in this meeting. And we talked about trust. That was the
Yeah.
big topic was
Yes. See,
trust.
of course it was.
Yeah. And we just worked through that and then just following up with them. And I gave them just some takeaway items. I want you to have this type of conversation in the next month or pull someone aside. And then I would follow up and say, okay, how'd it go? And they're like, oh, it was easier than I thought. Yes, you can do this. You can
Ashley, you're
do
so
this.
good at this. This is so fun for me because I'm always in the teaching mode and the
Hmm.
coaching mode and the training mode. So to be with you and you get it and you're so excited about it all is
Yes.
really exciting. When you go into a new organization, it is
Mhm.
hard for them to wrap their head around empowering people to do more than what their
Correct.
job is.
Yep.
They have so much fear. They're scared to give away too many tasks or delegate too much. And then they're redundant. They're not needed anymore. Maybe there's going to be mistakes made and they'll be held accountable because they just
Correct.
gave that task to somebody else. Or all these fears wrapped up in empowerment and giving people the chance to try
Right.
something they haven't tried before. To be able to sit with a room full of people and say, we're going to do this different. It's not your job, my job. It's a team.
Hmm.
Everybody can have these conversations together. That's huge. And had they experienced that before you did that?
No, took a lot of preparation. I was trying to change the culture of that position. It was just great because the feedback was positive for the most part. And I could tell a difference. They weren't so scared, like, oh, can I tell her that, she's not doing that? Yes, have that
Yes.
conversation. But I also, a part of me felt bad because they haven't had any development on how to talk to people. They don't know how to handle difficult conversations. So, yes, I was saying that to them, but they still needed more training and development
Mm.
to, maybe feel more comfortable with how to handle different situations.
So did you do communication trainings
Yes.
with them or workshops?
We did. Our director team and then my boss, we got together and we actually met with our leadership and development trainer at the hospital. And we came up with a syllabus of the topics they need to develop or they've never even heard of. And
Mhm.
it was an 8-week series. Directors were not in the meeting and the managers weren't in the meeting. So we did it for our leads or assistant nurse managers or charge nurses, that's what we call them. And then we also did a series for our managers. That was great to just fill that gap and just have someone neutral.
That's why I've been hired so much from companies because they have people that could lead those workshops. But having that outside person has been really helpful to them because they know there's no there's no bias. It's interesting though, because what I've seen over and over again is I'll get a team together. So their whole team and managers in a room. And it's a little bit like pulling teeth when you're asking questions and things we could work on. No, everything's good. And then I get one-on-one meetings. It's not so good. Now I got a
Right.
whole bunch of stuff coming. So
Yes.
it is building that trust where we would know how to have some of these conversations as a
Hmm.
team
Yes.
and doing it in a way that was kind and beneficial to the organization, not personal. Those are skills. I'm not scared of hard conversations. I don't like conflict, but I'm not afraid. If I have to be in conflict, I know how to manage my way through that. So to help people not have so much fear around conflict, it makes a big difference. Like I remember one team, there was one lady and she was really, really good at her job, but super quiet and very afraid of saying anything that could hurt somebody's feelings. She had a lot of insight she could give and she had a lot of input she was not giving. So she would tell me one on one, I see this and I think if they did this, it would be better. Or I see the other manager over there and I've been here longer and I watch what she's doing and I know it could be done more efficiently, but she wasn't telling her any of this. It took us months of work where she could feel confident enough to share what she was really thinking and give an honest opinion, not just say what they want to hear. She wasn't honoring her own experience and what she could bring to the table. She didn't feel like that was her place. But if we're a team, it's all of our place. So, do you remember a time when you've been mentoring or training somebody and they really didn't believe in their skills, but you believed in them?
Yes. Within my 10 years of being a leader, I developed 6 new managers. And I love that. I love that. And a lot of them didn't have that confidence. I would say probably half. And it was just having those conversations, or even just having them sit in my type of conversations I was having with people, just to hear different ways on how to respond or maybe operationally do things or something like that. It really made a big difference. Once I have a team, I just wrap my arms around them and don't want to let go. As a nursing leader, there are so many responsibilities. I mean, the rules, the regulation, it's a lot for someone to handle. And you can't throw them all in that as once. So the first one I did that and it just wasn't successful. So the last couple, I just did steps. So they didn't get all the responsibility as a manager in the beginning for quite some time. And if there was no manager that was also training them, I took that on as their leader. But I just spelled it out and just said, okay, week 1 or month 1, this is what I really want you to focus on. And if it was your people, let's talk about how we're going to do that. Are you having your weekly meetings? Are you having these conversations? Or this situation arrived. Okay, let's talk about before you address it. How are you going to address it? That type of thing. Instead of just throwing them out there, just giving them those stepping stones to feel confident and just put all those pieces together, because it's a lot.
So, how often were you having conversations with these managers that you were training?
So when they were in their orientation period, which again could be up to 3 or 4 months, it was weekly. I had formal weekly meetings, but I touched base with them every single day just because there's so many things thrown at them. And it's not even the people part. It's, oh my gosh, this safety event happened. How do I address it? Or this equipment broke. Who do I call? How do I get it replaced? Just those types of things too. Just being there for them. And I told them, if you have to text me 50 times a day, text me. It's fine. I want you to feel comfortable with how you need to respond to that situation.
Yeah, you wanted them to succeed.
Yes.
And people will say if you're checking on them that much or having these conversations, that's micromanagement. I do not agree with that. And I'm watching your head, you're nodding.
No, my conversations were never, did you do this? Or did you make sure you did this? It was, okay, let's talk about what happened today. What are you struggling with? What was a win? What do you feel good about? The focus was on them. It was more time for them to have the conversation with me instead of me just saying, okay, you need to make sure you do A, B, and C this week. It never was that type of way.
And there's the difference, Ashleigh, because it was actual conversations.
Yes. Yes. Right.
Sitting with somebody twice a year for a review or quarterly is not the same as building a relationship with them. And they know they can call and ask a question if they have one. They know that you're going to back them up if they need help. So that ongoing dialogue to me is, well, it's a big part of my training. It's not a checkup, making sure they're doing their job. It's a check-in to see how they're doing.
Correct. Just touching base with them.
I know with one company I was working with, the VP, he said, there's a lot I can't get to in a day because I'm constantly putting out fires. And it's always me putting out those fires. And I remember saying to him, when you empower other people to learn how to put out those fires, you will be able to focus your time on the high level things, those big priorities. So it's great that you're there for your people and you're helping them put out those fires. But my suggestion always is after the fire's out, use that as a case study with your team and say, here's exactly what I did when this happened. They gain that experience. And every time that happens, you've got more than just you that knows how to do it. Again, that's ongoing dialogue.
Right. And that's how you see, how do they respond? Are they reserved with this type of situation?
Yeah.
They feel more comfortable with this. That's how you start to learn their strengths and weaknesses. So you can
Mhm.
just build upon that. It has to be a part of every day or every week conversation, because you have to know your people. You have to get to know them.
Isn't that interesting? But do you think everybody gets that?
No.
Oh.
No. Karen, I think the biggest, frustration I see with organizations and business is they put so many other things in the center, which could be, in healthcare, it's the patient. Absolutely. But the people taking care of them need to be right with them. And if it's not communicated from the top down,
Mhm.
as leaders, if I'm coming in that role and all I hear is results, 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 outcomes, 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 and not investing in your people, then I'm not going to do that as a leader. And I'm not going to invest that time in my team because, one, maybe I didn't know that was what you needed to do if you're a new leader. But two, there's no emphasis on that. When you say your people, it's learning them. Someone else has a great quality doing something, put them on that special project or task or patient, whatever it may be. And then if other person has another quality, put them over here. It's just taking the time to do that. And a lot of people don't carve out that time in their day or week to do that.
I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. Observing and watching how people are, their interactions. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I can tell when something's up with people. I can feel it. I can see it. So if you're not spending the time observing, getting to know your people, how are you leading them?
In nursing, yes, I'm a nurse, but there are areas in nursing where it was not my experience whatsoever.
Yeah.
I even had a huge radiology department, which I didn't know radiology at all. But I literally for 6 months, all I did was watch and I just observed and I just asked questions and I learned their personalities and I would hear through my manager, okay, so this person's strong at this person's strong like this, but I'm trying to tackle this. And that way I could give them better advice, knowing the ins and out of their department. But I did that by listening and just observing. And
Observing.
you learn so much.
Yes, you see how people handle stress, what their outlook is in life. Just listening to things that they say, you're like, oh, that's a really positive person, or that's a really compassionate, empathetic person. And I think leaders with managers, especially, need to be watching those things and then going and pointing that out, saying, you know what, I just saw how kind you were. Or even telling a team member, like, I just saw what you did for your coworker. You didn't even know I was watching. I just want you to know I noticed that. And it was really nice of you. She needed that or he needed that today. You vocalizing that to somebody goes miles with
Yes.
them.
I used to tell my managers all the time, tell me the good things, who did something well. So, they would tell me that so and so found something on a scan the other day,
Yeah.
really, and really calm that patient down. Well, then next time I was rounding and saw that, I'd be like, hey, I heard what the amazing thing you did. Also shows that my managers and I have a strong relationship and we communicate well.
And it told that person that their manager cares about them because
Yes.
they went to you and told them. Now their trust level goes up even more. It takes a long time to build relationship, but we can't do this job without that.
Mm-mm.
I don't know how much more I can say that over and over again, that you need to build relationships.
In nursing, and I'm sure it's like this everywhere. My focus, yes, was on the people and to support them, but also fixing those broken processes so they could be successful, which
Yeah.
was supporting them in a different way. And I feel like my success was great because I listened to them. I would say, okay, this happened. What went on? What was the gaps? Truly listening to them in all aspects is just so important. It really
And I
is.
think what happens that gets lost because when managers don't have the mindset that you have, then they think that's a bunch of complaining.
Mhm.
And there are people, and you can go on my videos and just read the comments where it is this generation soft. Everybody needs to just pull up their socks and do their job. And you don't need compliments. You need to just do your job, get your paycheck, and shut up. Who wants to work like that? Every time I get those, I'm like, this is exactly why I do what I do. Thank you.
Yep. I got a comment today and I was like, oh my gosh. It just blows my mind. I'm like, oh, and you're a leader. The people part is just at the bottom, like, so focused on accomplishing tasks maybe and just doing the day-to-day work.
They don't get it. They don't.
Mm-mm.
Just go talk with them, have a conversation. And if you're hearing complaints, are you actually listening to what those are? Find out what the complaints are and start addressing them. As soon as we start looking for solutions, if you're a chronic complainer, you're not really looking for a solution.
Right.
So it wins both ways, because if we start to realize, oh, my manager's not into like a lot of complaining. If I complain, she's going to ask me for what I'm doing for a solution.
Right.
And they don't complain as much. It's a win.
And that's what I did. If I felt, especially in the beginning, when you're a new leader, people want to come up to you and tell them how they think or what didn't work before and what they want to see. So, if you feel like that's just getting out of control, that's what I would say. Okay, what's your solution? What do you think we could do to make it better? Well, I want you to think about it and come back to me. Because, of course, yes, I have my own ideas, but you guys are the ones physically doing the work all the time. I want to hear it from you. I remember when I was the middle manager, there was a safety event with one of my new nurses, and she had no confidence whatsoever. And this really threw her over the loop. And I was just like, oh my gosh, how's she going to handle this? She came in my office that next day with 5 ways she has learned and would have done it better. And I just was mind blown. And I was just like screaming and yelling. I'm like, I'm just so proud of you. Like, look at you growing.
See,
Like,
and would
that
you
is
have known that? You would not have guessed that.
No. So, and she felt empowered, and you could just see her confidence take off from there. And just small interactions just like that could just make a huge difference. When I was pondering the decision of leaving my current position, I hung in there for years because my team was so young, and I could not move on until I felt confident that they had the skills to be self-sufficient. And they are, and they're thriving.
I'm glad you just said that. So they're doing great after you.
They're doing well. I still keep in touch with them. I still mentor them in ways now because they're my family, and they are the reason why I was there. It wasn't because, I built this program or whatever. It was my team, and I loved being in that director role because I loved that developing that manager.
And if we had more people like you leading people, our workforce would be different. People want to feel like they matter, and they want to feel like they belong. This isn't complicated. Having friendships at work is what we want. We're there for how many hours? Nurses are there 12 hours.
Yes. Right. No one wants to work in a hostile environment.
Oh, why don't people get this?
I know.
Would you ever come back and do this again? Because I feel like we have like a million
Absolutely.
topics. Okay.
Yes.
I would love to have you back. This collaboration to me is just so fun, because when we're around like-minded people, I feel like that energy can really impact a lot of people. I enjoyed this.
Thank you. Again, thank you so much for the support. It means so much, Karen. It
really gosh, you're welcome. Your love for people comes through. All right, Ashleigh, we're going to do this again.
Okay, thank you so much, Karen.
Oh gosh, you're welcome. Thanks for being who you are out there.